Hello everyone, and welcome back. My name is Erin, and welcome to my channel on finding your path to your best emotional and physical health. Hope everybody's having a great day so far. Don't forget, if you like what you hear today, please subscribe so you can get more videos. Send this information to anybody you think who might need it to kind of help them get on their best path. And also, don't forget to click and download my 5 free videos on tips to finding your best emotional and physical health. So let's get started to today's kind of brief overview video as we've started to get into this series on cognitive decline and figuring out what that is and what that might look like. It's going to take us a few weeks to kind of get through all of this information. There's a lot to it, and I want to break it down into smaller parts because I don't want people to get overwhelmed, and I want to give them time to digest the information and make changes as needed and ask questions, because at some point there's going to be a lot of questions about what I should do and what steps I should take that are most important, and if I can only do one now, how do I start? So we're going to kind of give a brief overview and figure out what that is going to look like overall. So as we're talking about cognitive decline and the prevention of Alzheimer's, and we're going to use Alzheimer's as an overarching term for dementia, because sometimes people use them interchangeably, and if you really get into the nitty-gritty, Alzheimer's is a very specific type of cognitive decline, and there are other ones that are often related. And unfortunately, we find sometimes a true Alzheimer's in association with other types of cognitive decline and other types of dementia, such as vascular dementia. And I'll touch base on some of the similarities and the differences as we kind of go along. But there's so much interchange that we won't really separate a lot of that out. We'll talk just about brain health more in general and how that looks overall, because we want to preserve our overall brain health. And for the most part, there are basically 3 main things that we're going to work on as we're trying to preserve our overall cognitive functioning, and that's removal, resilience, and rebuild. Okay? So the very first step, of course, is going to be removal. Removal is something we're going to talk about extensively because you have to remove a number of things that kind of affect the brain. And removal is going to be about removing toxins, okay? That we are exposed to so many toxins today, it's just not even funny. And there are some ways we can kind of prevent taking in those into our body, but also some ways that we can kind of enhance getting rid of them. And we'll kind of talk about that and the benefits of that. One of those is sweating. There's a lot of people out there that advocate for saunas and exercise as a way to kind of remove toxins, which is true. The bigger one is insulin resistance. This has been a huge issue in this country and connected to all kinds of disorders, not just diabetes, but diabetes that leads into cognitive decline and dementia. So insulin resistance, there's a lot of ways that we can kind of manage that regardless of whether you have a family history of diabetes. It's not basically a death sentence that you're going to have diabetes. There are ways to manage that, specifically through diet, management of our ketones, so we can kind of burn that a little bit more, and we'll talk more about that in detail. Exercise and supplementation that kind of helps us improve our body's ability to utilize the sugars in our blood for energy, so that we don't get high blood sugars or high inflammation in our blood vessels that kind of cause our overall issues. So because the high blood sugars cause insulin to go up, which causes weight to go up, which then can make us want to feed the blood sugars more, and it comes into a big cycle. So getting our insulin sensitivity back up by AMPK activators, which we'll go into in more detail, and those kinds of things is going to be essential to helping our body deal with the sugar that we give it, because we are going to deal with that, and our body needs to have sugar to function, but it can also burn other forms of fats. And we're not talking about bacon, we're talking about healthy fats, MCT oils, and things like that. And we'll kind of get into some of those dietary things as we get into more details. A lot of times you'll hear ketogenic diet as being one of the ones that helps cognitive decline, which is true, but it's not a typical I've got to only eat 10 carbs a day type of ketogenic diet. There's a lot of options to that that not only involve ketosis through fasting, but also through the additions of healthy fats in the diet and things like that. So we'll kind of get into a little more detail about that. Hormone imbalance and removal of inflammatory processes, those are another things that we need to kind of look at. Hormones actually are more into the rebuilding process, so we'll kind of talk about that a little bit later. But we see a lot of inflammatory issues going on, and we don't always know where they're coming from because there's not a lot of testing done for some of these. And there's a lot of inflammatory sources in our environment. So number one, of course, is food and an imbalance of our overall healthy fats to unhealthy fats. We tend to take in a lot of inflammatory fats in our diet, in our American diet. There's also leaky gut issues based on our diet, which lets in if we have a leaky gut, we let in a lot of microbes and things that we don't need into our bloodstream that kind of cause overall inflammation in our bodies. We also can have immune reactions, underlying infections that we don't know about, for not supporting the immune system so that it can kind of keep those infections down. They can rise up again, and we don't know yet if this is going to be the case with coronavirus, but we know with some viruses, sometimes like a herpes virus or the chickenpox virus, right? Some of these viruses will stay dormant in the body, and certain things can kind of reactivate them, like stress, because stress lowers our immune system. So we'll kind of talk about how that interplays with the overall removal process. So those kinds of things can re-emerge and kind of cause ongoing issues. And it also happens with bacterial stuff as well, where we might suppress those. People see that within Lyme disease and some other kinds of ongoing issues that kind of continue to re-emerge in the body, and we'll get into a little bit more detail about that. Another one of the things that we'll talk about is the resilience and building our overall resilience. This does also correlate with diet. Imagine that. That's one of our easiest things to kind of change, but just to kind of understand how we are supporting our overall dietary function so that we have the building blocks necessary to do the things we need. Because not only does our body become less efficient at managing those things as we age, we also have difficulties in our environment obtaining the things we need. Again, that part goes back to diet. So sometimes it's easier to just do the supplementation support necessary to maintain that cognitive health. Vitamin D support is a big one, zinc, those kinds of things. Deficiencies in a lot of these vitamins and minerals will affect our body's ability to do what it needs to do. And then that, of course, is going to lead into rebuilding. So rebuilding has to do with, of course, building the support, but also reconnecting those kind of neural synapses that have kind of declined or been pruned because they just haven't been supported, either because there's been inflammation that has cut the blood supply, or there just hasn't been what we call the trophic support to help maintain our brains the way that we need them to. So then we can, once we've fed them what they need, then we can rebuild through exercise, meditation, brain exercises, and physical exercise. Let's clarify that, because physical exercise can actually increase our brain-derived neurotropic factor, which actually is going to help increase those neural networks as well. So exercise has a lot of benefits, which we'll get into a little bit. So we're going to rebuild, and I always tell people when I'm talking to them, if you've got like grandkids or little people, like preschool age people or kindergarten people, if those people are in your life, play those games with them that they have to do for kindergarten and preschool. There's a reason those things work. It's because it rebuilds and develops those basic building blocks of our cognitive abilities that we have then built on, of course, throughout the years. We all went through that when we were young to kind of develop those skills. And when our brains start to decline and we are losing some of them, maybe because we don't use them as much, like if you don't use your visual spatial skills because you use language more throughout your career or whatever you did for work, you can work on and rebuild those things by doing basic skills, word searches and puzzles and those kinds of things. Never underestimate the value of childhood play. There's a reason for it, and there's a reason that it works really well. So that's kind of an overview of some of the things we're going to start going into more in depth to help understand why this works and what's important as far as changes that you might need to make to manage your health. So if you have any questions, please feel free to message me if you're interested in possibly getting some more direct health coaching for your specific situation. Please connect with me on the website and we will set you up with that. So if you have any questions, again, let me know because I'd be happy to help. Thanks for listening and have a great day.